All right, everyone, welcome back. And let me just give you the updated TLDR version of my thoughts on how to heal CPTSD with psychedelics, right? So I'm going to give you the short form version, kind of the condensed version of my understanding of this. This is obviously something I talk a lot about on this channel. It's a theme here. It's kind of at the core of a lot of the work that I do and a lot of what I'm exploring and helping people with. So there's a much deeper version of what I'm about to say, but let me give you the cliff notes here in case you are suffering with CPTSD yourself, you're trying to undo your own trauma, and you're looking at psychedelics or psychedelic therapy as a potential tool for that. And you want to know, how do I do this? What does this path actually look like? What are the practicals of this? Let me give this to you. So, okay. Really quick, let's be clear. CPTSD is another way of describing what we could think of as relational trauma or interpersonal trauma, right? Generally, complex trauma is not born out of single incidences. That's what makes it complex, is that it's kind of a more chronic, repetitive traumatization over time, usually embedded in the way we were related to either by people or by groups and systems, etc. Right? So hopefully this makes sense to you so far and you're resonating with this. So first thing I want you to clearly understand is that in order to heal complex trauma, you're going to need some sort of attachment work and relational tool for self-healing, if that makes sense. So you're not going to be able to heal just through, looking for core incidents, this kind of a thing. It's an ongoing relational intervention. It's a way of using relationship to counteract the messages that your nervous system got earlier on that's going to rewire your complex trauma. So I want to be clear about this. So the first thing you're going to need is a clear understanding of attachment theory. You're going to need a good understanding of what secure attachment is, what the behaviors of secure attachment are, what that looks like, what that feels like. You're going to have that modeled for you. And you're going to have to learn how to either put yourself in situations of interacting with secure people to get those kind of experiences, whether that's with a therapist, for example, or just friends that are securely attached who can tolerate your dysregulation. Or you're going to have to learn how to kind of model this for yourself and apply this in your own self-relationship, which is something I'm going to be teaching here in a course that I'm releasing very soon. So the first thing I want you to know is that you need to understand how to use relationship as a healing tool, if that makes sense, right? So this is the core of what's going to heal your CPTSD. The implications of this are deep and wide-reaching, and this can absolutely get into traumatic incidents and get into all kinds of stuff, right? So this goes deep, but essentially you want some sort of attachment repair skill set or tool, right? I have my own thoughts on that, and I'll be sharing that again in other videos. And so how does this connect to psychedelics? This is really the million-dollar question, because what I've found personally is that, I did psychedelics for a very long time trying to heal myself and had all kinds of ego death experiences and non-dual, ecstatic bliss states and profound spiritual realizations and deep feelings of oneness with life and love for all humanity, all these exquisitely beautiful peak experiences, right? But they did not fundamentally rewrite my attachment wounds. So I want to be clear about that. So psychedelics left to their own devices, especially used the way a lot of psychedelic therapists are kind of approaching it these days, may not reach into your attachment system and therefore may not heal your attachment stuff, right? So there is a way that we have to understand how to put together working with our attachment stuff in a psychedelic space. So this means being clever about how much you're taking, the dosage you're taking of the medicine, and clearly understanding attachment dynamics and how this comes up when you take the psychedelic, and then using that to regulate yourself, on the medicine. And that will essentially allow you to go deeper or understand more or unpack more of what's going on relationally for you, right? And what these wounds really are and how deep they go and what the implications of them are and kind of the meta layers and all that. Like there's utility, is what I'm saying here with psychedelics for doing attachment work, but you have to consciously put the two together. They don't just automatically go together. It's not just automatically obvious that when you take a psychedelic, you're going to start repairing your attachment system. That's generally not the way it works. And this is why so many people take psychedelics for decades and for a long time and still have their kind of weird relational attachment stuff, right? So I want you to understand that really clearly. So we need to basically understand how to relate in a proper way that's going to be healing for ourselves. Then we want to bring in the medicine in the right way, with the right person, the right context, getting all things properly, and bring these two things together intentionally in a way to do this work, right? Now, what I see often is the case for people, if they're coming from a complex trauma background, especially if you still have a lot of trauma patterns that you're kind of defaulting into, there are a couple things you're probably going to need first as a prerequisite to be able to tolerate the kind of occasional intensity or the waves of dysregulation that will come up when you're doing psychedelics. So the first things you're going to need, kind of prerequisites to prepare for doing work on your CPTSD, I would recommend first developing a good mindfulness practice so that you can get into a more observer mode and observe your own internal experience without fully identifying with it, right? So I've said this in other videos recently, but basically if you are fully absorbed into your fear, your trigger, your pain, your anger, whatever it is, it's hard to work on it because you are it, if that makes sense. So you need to be able to disidentify just enough, just pull back just enough to be able to observe and see this without fully getting sucked into it, right? So this is where mindfulness comes in super, super handy. You would also want to create some sort of a compassion practice for yourself. Work on opening your heart, work on actively loving, work on knowing how to meet whatever arises inside of you with some degree of compassion. This is also an incredibly important tool because there are going to be aspects of you that are frightened, wounded, overwhelmed, maybe more shadow aspects that are angry or controlling or have darker edges to them. And we really need to be able to bring and hold a compassionate space with unconditionally with every part of us that pops up in a psychedelic session. So you want to have compassion and mindfulness ready to go, I say, before you even start using psychedelics. Then again, once you have the compassion, the mindfulness, then you bring in a clear understanding of attachment and how to use relating to heal. From there, generally what I would do and what I recommend to people usually is that they start with MDMA, because MDMA is an easier substance to work with on relational stuff. It gives us a lot of courage. It makes it feel much safer to go to these places. We're less likely to get really overwhelmed and dysregulated. So I would start with MDMA for maybe 2, 3, 4 sessions as needed, until you really get the groove of really supporting yourself, connecting with yourself, or being supported and connected with in the right way by, say, an appropriate therapist or guide or someone like that. Once you've got that down, if then you want to pivot to, say, psilocybin or one of the other psychedelics, that would be maybe a more appropriate time to begin down that path. So generally speaking, this is what I would do if I was working on CPTSD with psychedelics. Other things I would do, I would put myself in social situations regularly with healthy people. So I'd pursue, pockets and communities of people that are healthier on average and more likely to be accepting, warm, friendly, compassionate, supportive, right? You decide what that's going to be for you. And I would also honestly do a lot of work, and this is another thing I teach my clients, I would do a lot of work on myself relationally in sober states in between my psychedelic sessions. So I would not rely just on my psychedelic therapy sessions to do all the heavy lifting and all the work for me. Quite the contrary, I'd be doing most of the work in the prep, in the integration, and in the space and time in between sessions, just relating to myself or working relationships in a healthy way, starting to re-imprint my attachment system. So that's essentially how you undo CPTSD. There's a lot more to say about it. That's really just kind of the high level, rough sketch version of this. But this is what I'm showing people all the time. This is what I'm teaching people. And if you're trying to figure out how to do it, from my experience, this is how it's done. So for whatever that's worth, I hope this serves you well. And we'll wrap the video here. Much love to you all. If this resonates, do me a favor, because I'm trying to grow the channel and get more engagement here. Leave a comment down below, leave a thumbs up. Let me know, does this hit home for you? Does this make sense? Is this clear enough? Do I need to make another video that's even more clear about this, right? Also, if you wouldn't mind, if you haven't subscribed and you resonate with me or this content, do consider subscribing as well. Much more on the way for you guys soon. Take care.